course, the reaction isn't going to be quite that benevolent. If he says good, it's all good. If he's angry, you'll know that he's out to get me. Jump. Actually, let's read 8. Verse 8? Verse 8? Yeah.
As for you, show kindness to your servants, for you have brought him into a covenant with you before the Lord. If I am guilty, then kill me yourself. Why hand me over to your father?
So do you think David is really suspicious of Jonathan being in collusion with his father at this point? Or how else could we read that statement? It could be rhetoric. Look, if you think there's guilt in me, just kill me yourself. And Jonathan just said, no, I don't think my dad's out to kill you. And so David could be suspicious, like, Jonathan, are you in on this? Are you trying to kill me too? Then just do it. Yeah, so it could be either way there. And Jonathan's like, hey, I would tell you if I knew anything. That's pretty much what the next verse says. I would tell you. And so then they come up with a plan. How is he going to know if his father answers harshly? So this gets kind of covert, and it's not exactly clear exactly how this is going to work out. So if his father answers harshly at dinner, how are you going to communicate with me? You can't exactly just kind of walk over and meet me because they might follow you. They might be trying to kill David. They don't really say all that, but how are we going to do this? So they go out to the field in verse 11. Let's read verse 11. Well, actually, before we do that, no, go on. We'll read the verse 11 first. Sorry, go on.
Number 9.
11. We'll just skip a couple verses.
Come, Jonathan said, let's go out into the field. So they went there together.
Then Jonathan said to David, I swear by the Lord, the God of Israel, that I will surely sound out my father by this time the day after tomorrow. If he is favorably disposed toward you, will I not send you word and let you know?
But if he is angry and wants you killed, may the Lord strike me and even kill me if I don't warn you, so you can escape and live. May the Lord be with you as he used to be with my father.
If I remain alive, be loyal to me. But if I die,
do not ever cut off the kindness from my family, or heaven will the Lord cut off everyone of David's enemies from the face of the earth.
Okay, so why is he making David swear? Is he suspicious that David would betray him? So earlier David was kind of like, hey, if you're in on this, do you think I'm guilty? Kill me. And now Jonathan's like, okay, I will warn you, but you promise me that you'll be faithful to me in my house. And even when you become king, if I'm dead, you treat my children well, pretty much, something like that, right? Why would he be suspicious of that? If David does become king, this would mean regime change. And in the ancient Near East, if a new regime takes over, a new king, a new dynasty, you kill off all the males, at least, of the previous regime to make sure they never have a claim to the throne, right? So Jonathan might have, it's pretty true if he thinks David's going to be the new king, which clearly he does. He's saying, but promise you're not going to kill my children, because he may have a son with him right now. Actually, some think that the boy that goes and collects the arrow is his son right there. Let's read some more there. They made a covenant together. Jonathan made David swear by his love for him. He loved him as he loved his own life. Let's jump down to 18.
Then Jonathan said to David, tomorrow is the new moon's feast. You will be missed, because your seat will be empty.
The day after tomorrow, toward evening, go to the place where you hid when this trouble of it, as though I was shooting at a target.
I will shoot 3 arrows to the side of it, though. Oh, wait. Then I will send a boy and say, go, find the arrows. If I say to him, look, the arrows are on the side of you, bring them here, then come, because as surely as the Lord lives, you are safe, there is no danger.
But if I tell him, go farther, the arrows are still ahead of you, then it will mean that you must leave immediately, for the Lord is sending you away.
Okay, so they have this covert plan with the arrows. I always wonder that if there is no problem, why even go with the arrows? Why not just run up and say, it's all clear? But it was going to be an arrow thing. I guess maybe in case they were followed and they didn't want to look like they had this worked out, just act like it's all good, and then David can just kind of naturally show up and act that he was in Bethlehem, maybe, or something like that. But they have this little plan here. So David hunkers down for a couple nights of roughing it in the field. Jonathan heads to the royal banquet. Let's jump down to 26. When he sees that David's place is empty. Someone read 26?
So they say anything that day because he thought perhaps David became paid somehow. That must be it.
So here again is Saul. Saul's been trying to kill him. Okay, he knows that he fled the house. He's thrown the spear at him. David is now on the run, and he thinks David just must be unclean, some ceremonially unclean, cultic uncleanness. So what does this show us about Saul's character?
Suspicious.
Unstable.
Unstable, yeah. Kind of, isn't it logical to think, well, the guy obviously knows I'm out to kill him? Or is he not out to kill him at that moment? Because he's thinking, oh, where's David? Where's David? I want to chat with David a little bit and talk a little bit more about things. I don't know. But, and it's also interesting, I think, that he instantly thinks of cultic uncleanness because we've seen he's kind of obsessed with this rituals and this type of thing. So it must be that. It must be ritual uncleanness. That must be the reason he's not here. So Saul's madness might be shown, and he doesn't consider his own behavior against David to be the reason. Maybe his growing madness and sociopathic ways. He's blind to his own faults. Let's read some more. Second day, we're in 27? Or did we read that one? Sort of did. He doesn't show up again. He says, how come the son of Jesse has not come yesterday or today? Now he's calling him son of Jesse, which seems to be almost a term of derision later when they talk about son of Jesse, instead of using his name. So it could show some hostility there. Let's read 28. I'll summarize it. So he tells them the thing of how he had to go to Bethlehem. And how is Saul going to react? Let's read 30. Someone want to read 30?
So Saul came there to cheer up and he said to him, you son of a perverse, unrebellious woman, that I know that you have sided with the son of Jesse to your own shame and the shame of your mother before you.
Okay. What the heck? What is he talking about?
Some vicious curse.
What's that?
Some vicious curse.
A vicious curse. So he calls his own son of a perverse, rebellious woman. And if you've chosen the son of Jesse to your own shame and your mother's nakedness, it's kind of hostile terms about his wife. What's his wife's name? You want to know? You want to Google it? Ahinoam? David married someone named Ahinoam. Could it be the same woman? This is what some scholars have suggested. So Saul's only really said to have one wife. I think there's a concubine mentioned as well, but Ahinoam. So sometimes in the ancient world, it was thought, taking the wife of the former king, you kind of take his power, right? And so some are suggesting, because he does have a wife with the same name as Saul's wife, that David took Saul's wife, literally. And that's where the statement comes from. Perverse, rebellious woman, the shame of your mother's nakedness. Okay. And when it mentions David's wife, Ahinoam, I think she's called Ahinoam of Jezreel. So it doesn't say that it's the same name, but a few scholars have suggested, I think Baruch Halpern is one of them, that it's the same person. They're the only Ahinoams mentioned in the Bible, although David's is called Ahinoam of Jezreel, and this one's called Ahinoam, daughter of whoever that was. What do you think? Is that plausible? Is it likely on our reading of the text? Don't know.
But in those days, they only have a handful of names going around, so lots of people have the same name anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we have examples of people with the same name, so it's not like no one else could be named Ahinoam.
And they do intentionally differentiate between the two.
Yeah.
Versus
Yeah. So I don't follow that interpretation. I think that the way David's wife is described, I believe it's Ahinoam of Jezreel, and Saul's is not. I think it's distinguishing between the two. But some have found it quite a provocative thesis that David stole Saul's wife, and that explains this outburst here as well.
So it means David married the mother and the daughter.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it would be a messed up situation. But this is collecting pieces of evidence against David's character, right? Like in Brooke Halpern's book, he talks about all uh, the ways that David is really cunning. But a little later in the story, it's very clear when David becomes king, Abner comes to join the kingdom, Saul's general. David says, okay, great, we'll join. And David's general Joab goes and kills Abner without David's permission. But that really helps David. So they say, well, look, he probably wanted Joab to do it, and he just was distancing himself and got that done. Similarly, Ishbosheth, Saul's son, becomes king in the north after David's king in the south. And people go in the middle of the day and kill Ishbosheth. And David is so mad about it, he has those people killed who killed Ishbosheth. But people reading suspiciously say, well, David was probably behind that too. He's getting rid of all his political enemies. So they take all this kind of hints and suspicion and they put it all together and make David out to be pretty much an immoral man in every respect. And this is just one of the little building blocks on it. But I don't follow it because I do think that the text is distinguishing the two Ahims. And this could just be a way of, it's like, you son of a bee, right? That's kind of the ancient way of doing it, something like that. Although it's his own wife he's talking about. So this is definitely an angry outburst, which David predicted, right? He said, if he's very nice about it, we'll know there's no problems. Let's read a little bit more. 31, yeah.
As long as the son of Jesse lives on this earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established. Now send someone to bring him to me, for he must die.
So here he seems concerned, I think I mentioned this earlier, with his son's future as king. But then 2 verses later, he throws a spear at him and tries to kill him. So clearly he is a unbalanced, disturbed person, right? He seems to be concerned about his son, and then he tries to kill his son. And Jonathan, this must have really woke him up, and he's like, "What? Why? What has he done?" So he really did not think his dad was up to this. So this whole thing was probably more or less to have David make Jonathan clue into what's going on, because David already knew. He's had to dodge these murderous attempts many times, right? Let's jump down to when they go back to the field. Look down at verse 36. He goes down there and he's got the boy with him, the little boy.
And he said to the boy, run and find the arrows I shoot. And the boy ran, he shot an arrow beyond him.
Remember what the plan was? What was he supposed to shoot?
David?
One arrow? 3 arrows. 3 beyond meant go. God's sending you on. 3 short was it's okay, come out. So that kind of abandons the plan. Doesn't follow exactly. Fires 1 arrow, and then what happens? Let's keep reading.
When the boy came to the place where Jonathan's arrow had fallen, Jonathan called out after him, "Isn't the arrow behind you?"
Hurry, hurry, don't wait. So the boy quickly gathered up the arrows and ran back to his master. 39.
The boy had no idea what had happened. Only Jonathan and David knew.
Then Jonathan gave his importance to the boy and said, go carry them back to town.
After the boy had gone, David got up from the south side of the stone and bowed down before Jonathan 3 times, with his face to the ground. Then they kissed each other and wept together, but David wept the most.
Okay, so there they're kissing again. That's part of the homosexual interpretation. But in the ancient world, you're always having people kissing each other anyway. And even in the modern world in many cultures, right? But here the secrecy is kind of abandoned. They have all this plan of just going to shoot the arrows. It means go. And then it's like, well, let's meet up anyway and tell you. And then you could tell he was very urgent about it because he didn't say he was going to say, you better hurry, go, they're beyond you, go. It's like he's trying to be very clear. And then they just meet up anyway. And David weeps the more. So maybe this is showing that David loved Jonathan, obviously, right? But we haven't had that stated yet, but as clearly. And again, he gets them reiterated, they have a covenant between him and his descendants forever. This comes into play in the second book of Samuel, where after Jonathan's dead, his son Mephibosheth, David looks out for him and calls him and gets him to eat in his palace. So, Some have made some theological reflections on this chapter and think about what Jonathan is giving up for the kingdom of David. So the demands of the kingdom of God, you could say. In the book of Chronicles, the kingdom of David is equated with the kingdom of God. When God makes a covenant with David in 2 Samuel 7, in 2 Samuel 7 it says, your kingdom I'll establish. He'll rule over your kingdom. And then in Chronicles it says over my kingdom, over God's kingdom. So it's kind of a theological exposition of this, in that the kingdom of David is the kingdom of God, which of course we're familiar with from Jesus in the New Testament. Talks about the kingdom of God quite a bit. So some have suggested there's some things we can connect with this here. Reflect on the cost of loyalty and ambiguities in which loyalty must be practiced. So Jonathan has to kind of give up his kingdom to support David's kingdom, right? He gives up everything, that all the rights he has. And so Walter Brueggemann, in a reflection on this, talks about this a little bit and says it's similar with Christ's kingdom. We give up our rights and we give it all to, we give our life to the kingdom of God, right? And so what it costs us something. So the cost of loyalty, and it's not always clear exactly what this will entail, what it means. There's ambiguities in trying to show ourselves loyal. Jesus, of course, famously says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father, mother, wife, children, brothers, sisters, even his own life, he can't be my disciple. And this has been interpreted various ways, but probably it doesn't mean you literally hate your wife, but it's in comparison to the kingdom. Your loyalties should be to the kingdom. And here Jonathan has to choose against his father, who's the king, who he loves, and wouldn't even believe he was after David until now, and choose against his own future of being the king and the ruler and giving that all up in order to support the kingdom that God has chosen with the anointed one. So it's an interesting reflection between the two.